we have our next guest on the line. Let me introduce the former National Wrestling Alliance World Women's Champion, held it for over a year, one of Sign Guy's favorite wrestlers, talks about her constantly. We've got Miss Kacee Carlisle. How are you this evening?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for such a great introduction. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. My name is Zane Paisley, and also on the line, obviously you know Sign Guy, and we do have the incredible Huck, wrestler out of North Carolina, also works all along the southeast, William Huckby. Huck, you want to say hi to Miss Kacee Carlisle?
Hey, Kacee. I will say, I think Kacee knows me by now. We've had several conversations with several different companies, and I've told her that she, in my opinion, is the toughest person in professional wrestling, period.
Of course I don't know who Huck is. Yes, of course I do. Hi, Huck. I had no idea I'd be talking to you.
Yes, I'm so excited about it.
That's true. He told me I was the toughest person in wrestling, and I told him he was a little cuckoo.
Well, he would know. He's a pretty tough guy.
That's true. I mean, I'm not going to debate him on it. If he wants to, sacrifice his own ego and self to say I'm tougher, that's totally cool with me, and I'm on board for it. Yay.
Well, Kacee, since this is your first time on the Undisputed Wrestling Show, why don't you let our listeners know how you got involved in this crazy world of professional wrestling?
Well, I'll try to keep a long story shorter than it normally would be. The long and the short of it is that I was the biggest wrestling fan on the face of the earth from the time that I was 8 years old. And I mean, absolutely head over heels, obsessed to a somewhat concerning degree, in love with professional wrestling. And I always told everybody that that's what I was going to do. I decided very early. It took me, I think, a week to decide after I started watching it, that I was going to grow up to be a wrestler and be part of wrestling. And, it was the typical reaction you give an 8-year-old kid who says they're going to do something. You just kind of give that mandatory positive reinforcement and tell them that's super, and then you kind of go about your day. And so that's what everyone did. And what they didn't realize was I was really serious about it and never fell out of love with wrestling, never got away from it, clearly, never lost my passion for it. And in 1997, I attended an independent event that was nearby my house, and got to talking to one of the wrestlers who was there that night, but not wrestling due to an injury. And we just started talking about how much of a fan I was. He was surprised that I was a female alone at a professional wrestling show, and I wasn't there with a boyfriend. I wasn't there with like a dad or a brother. I was there on my own. And it kind of surprised him, so that's what started the conversation off. And it turns out that wrestler was Shorty Smalls, and he was involved with a training school about 2 hours from where I live, as one of the trainers. And he told me if I really wanted to pursue it and I was serious, that I could come down to the school and kind of check it out. So, needless to say, I did. And he wasn't affiliated with that school terribly long after I met him, but Shorty continued training me on an individual basis. We were lucky enough that he knew people in other areas that were still drivable, that had schools that were willing to let me come in and, be trained by Shorty and so forth, and kind of jump into their class, which was exceptionally nice of them. And obviously, I owe them something for that. So that's kind of how I got started. He trained me, and I started as a manager for Shorty. My first show as a manager was in 98, and was just kind of hit or miss for several years because of commitments away from wrestling. And then in 2002, I started on what you would call a full-time indie schedule, working like 3 times a week as his manager, and was training the whole time for my in-ring debut, which finally happened July 30th, 2005 in Olney, Virginia, for a joint show that was being run by Pops, who's off of the Wild Samoan, and Travis Bradshaw, who is still the promoter of BCW down in the Norfolk, Virginia area.
Well, thank you so much. Now, when you were training and being a manager, did you ever have to do any refereeing?
I refereed mini matches and so forth in training. I was never a referee, an actual referee in a match on a card until actually just earlier this year, if you can believe it. That was my first time actually being booked to ref a match. But other than that, it was just in training, just little mini matches and so forth, just to learn about the position and have that knowledge.
Well, I feel like a referee right now because I know Huck and Sign Guy are both clamoring to ask you questions, but Sign Guy's interviewed you before on different shows. I'm going to kick it over to the incredible Huck, Will Huckabee.
Hey, Kacee.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
As one of my favorite female wrestlers, and somebody, a true vet and stuff, especially not only just women's wrestling, but wrestling in general and stuff, and you travel so much. How is your feelings right now towards the increased popularity, the huge comeback, whatever you want to call it, as far as women's wrestling is concerned? What is your opinion about that? How do you feel about the resurgence of actual women's wrestling and not just being, tits and ass and stuff?
I love it. Of course, am all for it. I think it's a fantastic thing. I think that it's really great to see that we're starting to get into a time in professional wrestling when, I think people are starting to finally get it through their head and starting to be open about the fact that women can look really, really hot and really beautiful and really sexy and really good, but they can work too. And so I think it's refreshing to see that it's starting to kind of move over to the point where it doesn't have to be one or the other. And not only, promoters and bookers, but fans also on a larger scale are starting to kind of see that it is possible to have a well-rounded woman who can look the part as far as the cosmetic side of our business goes, but also get in the ring and go. And I think that's awesome, and I think it's exciting, and I think with all of the attention kind of shifting to that type of woman and that type of wrestler, I think that we're going to see it continue to become more prominent in wrestling, and I think we're going to continue to see, I hope, the fan base of women's wrestling expand because we're not being as pigeonholed right now into, the gimmick matches and all the crap and BS and the 3 minutes when part of it's your entrance that we've seen happen to women in the past.
Now, you've collected titles all over the place. Congratulations on, their new accolade and stuff, being the first Lucha Pride Women's Champion. Am I correct?
You are correct, yes. Thank you.
No problem. Does the feeling of being, the women's champion of any company, does that feeling ever go away? Does that feeling of pride ever go away? Or do you just kind of, especially at your level of stuff, do you just kind of get used to it and say, it's expected that when I walk in here, I'm the best?
Hell no. No, not at all. I can honestly say, it doesn't. And it's the first time I won a title, I think obviously is going to stick out and be very, very special because it was the first time. And, when that happens, we don't know what the future holds now, but especially back then, I had no way of knowing that I would have the success that I've had. I hoped for it, but I had no way of knowing that would happen. So the first title especially is always going to hold a special place in my heart. The NWA Women's World title, for obvious reasons, will always hold a very special place in my heart. But that being said, I don't mean that to take away from the other titles that I do currently hold or have held, because they all do mean something to me. And I understand and I get, as I say that, there are people listening both in the business and out who automatically are going to go to the mindset that a title is nothing more than an ornament or a prop, as some people put it, et cetera. And that's cool. And I respect that, and it's true to a degree. But at the same time, we just got done talking about how there's such a great roster of women coming up in the business right now. And to me, when somebody decides to crown you as their champion and make you the face of that women's division or their company, it's a compliment. And I take it as a compliment, and I take it as an honor and something I'm very proud of and I appreciate. And it's humbling that the number of people who I've held the title for have looked at me as somebody who, you know, they weren't representing their company. It's a compliment on many levels to me, so it never gets old. It never feels different. It's something that means a lot to me every single time, regardless of where, when, who, etc.
Now, to explain why I told you, why I say that you're the toughest person in professional wrestling, we both remember the day, you know what I'm saying, West Virginia, you were injured and stuff and, you know, taped up, laced up, you know, and you went out there and had an amazing match with Kelly Klein. And of course, you know, you see me and I bang my head against stuff before I go out to the match or whatever. But how much more physically, demanding, how much more physically demanding is it to be a female wrestler? And not only that, what is the pressure that you personally feel before you go out to a match and stuff, especially on that night specifically, you know, when you knew you had a really great opponent, you knew the anticipation for that match was very high and stuff. What was your mind state going into that match that night and stuff, and any other match especially?
Well, as far as like the prep and everything else, to me, I don't ever, you know, I try to avoid situations where I have the mindset of putting any type of, I'm trying to think of the right word, justification or footnote on the fact that I'm a woman. You know, I like to approach everything like I'm a worker, I'm a wrestler. You know, it doesn't matter what my anatomy is. It doesn't matter, you know, if I'm male or female. I like to think that I approach my matches, regardless of who they're with, the same way that any of the guys would. And that's just wanting to go out there and have a badass match and leave people remembering it for being a solid encounter, a hard-hitting encounter, wanting to impress people, live up to my reputation. And I think that that's the same across the board, I would hope, for everybody. You know, that night specifically that you're referring to, I have to say I was a little preoccupied because the injury that Huck keeps referring to is my knee, which I don't think it's a huge secret at this point that I have an injured knee, but it was actually tweaked pretty badly the night before in my match. And the amount of pain I was in was greater than what it had been at any point previously. So I was a tad preoccupied because, you know, typical wrestler mentality, I wasn't worried about my knee necessarily. I was worried about not giving the match that I wanted to give to both the promotion, to the fans, to Kelly. I was more preoccupied about my knee holding me back from that standpoint than, oh, my knee is hurt and that sucks and, you know, wow, boo-hoo-hoo. So I think I was trying to focus on getting through and making sure nobody could tell that I was hurt, or making sure there wasn't a time when somebody was like watching my match who might be familiar with me and thinking that I looked off in any way. You know, so I just kind of tried to not focus on my knee and focus on just doing what I do.
Did we lose her?
I think we did.
Uh-oh.
Hello?
Hey, I think we lost you for a second there.
I was still on. I was like, yes, I'm here. I can hear you guys. I don't know what happened. I hear, uh-oh, and I was like, oh, crap, did I say something wrong? And then all of a sudden they're like, well, she's not there. And I'm like, yes, I am. I'm right here.
We'll blame that on Zane. Before I pass the torch and stuff to Fine Guy, I've got to ask you, and I would feel remiss. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, how much longer do you think that you're going to be an active in-ring wrestler? And what does, after in-ring duty and in-ring competition is over with for Kacee Carlisle, What does the future hold for life after being an actual wrestler?
What's that? We must have gotten disconnected again. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
No, I was just kidding around.
Oh.
I'm being a smartass, and that's because I don't know. And the truth of the matter is, I don't want to jinx myself, knock on wood, but the truth of the matter is I don't know. I truly just I plan to go as long as my body is going to let me go, and that's the God's honest truth. So, if something happens and I'm done at the end of this year, knock on wood, I really hope not, so be it. I truly just plan to go as long as my body's going to allow me to go. And whether that's another year, whether that's another 2 years, I'm not sure. I would like to have a few more years in the ring if I could, and I'm hoping that that's possible. So we'll have to see. That's my hope, my goal. After I'm done in the ring, the truth of the matter is and this sounds cliche, I swear, however, it's the truth. I don't know, and I don't want to imagine what my life would be like without wrestling. I have no clue what that would be like, nor do I want to know what that would be like. So my hope is once I'm done in the ring that I'll still have the ability to be in the business, whether it be as a trainer, which I would absolutely love, or if it would be as, working as a manager, doing commentary, booking, promoting. I'm up for all of it. You never know. So my hope is to stay involved in the business until the day comes when I'm just no longer welcome or I've just completely lost my mind. In ring, I'm hoping for a couple of years, but that's more of a physical question than it is a mental or an emotional one.
Yeah, I see what you did there. Well, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to somebody you know very well. Sign Guy, what do you have for Mrs. Carlisle?
Well, I know this week, Gorgeous, you have a big rematch coming up with Mickie James. It's been a while in the making. You want to tell us a little bit about the rematch you have Saturday?
The rematch, yeah. This is going to be my third encounter with Mickie James. And it's going down in Suffolk, Virginia. And it's going to be at the Salvation Army Community Center. It is a fundraiser for the Salvation Army. Mickie and I are the main event of the evening. And, I have to say, both times I've wrestled her before, it's been it's been a pleasure. It's been a great contest. She and I have the ability, it seems, to go toe to toe with each other. A little fun fact, Shorty Smalls, who was my trainer, was also one of her very first trainers. So we have a little bit of a similar background in that respect. But I'm looking forward to it. It should be a really great night. Not just our match, but the entire card just looks completely awesome. Anyone who's in the area who's able to get there, again, it is a fundraiser, which always makes it extra special. But, this is going down for VCW, which is Vanguard Championship Wrestling. And, as I said earlier, Travis Bradshaw is the VCW promoter, and he was one of the co-promoters of my very first, wrestling match. So, it's kind of, a little tiny bit of a homecoming, if you would, in a way, but it's a match I'm really looking forward to. I always enjoy getting in there with somebody who's had a taste of success that, we all are striving to have, kind of match up a little bit and see how I fare against her. So it's going to be an excellent night.
One of the ways I learned of that match, of course, was via KaceyCarlisle.com, which is home for people's gift-giving needs as well, with fine merchandise available. What has been the success of KaceyCarlisle.com? Have you noticed upswing of merchandise sales? Have you noticed a lot of people showing more interest in you since you launched the website officially?
Excellent question. I see very steady traffic on my website. The merchandise sales they fluctuate, it kind of depends. But, I can honestly say that I very much love having my website. Not only did I want a website in general, but, I get so tired of the actual, the Facebook and the Twitter and everything. For example, Facebook, I get almost every day a message from somebody saying they can't add me because my friend list is full and, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, okay, let me just have a one kind of stop shop for everybody so they don't have to worry about that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, my website traffic is pretty darn steady. I keep an eye on that. My merchandise sales, they fluctuate a little bit. You know, there could be a few more t-shirts going out the door, but, the truth of the matter is, you know, even one hit on my website means that somebody out there knows my name and is looking at me and paying attention to me. So I'm appreciative of all of it and of everybody who visits my site. And, you know, there is several sections on there just to provide information about me, my upcoming events, my merchandise, as you said. So I always invite people to check it out and keep up with me on my website if they don't want to deal with social media restrictions.
Now, in addition to the rematch with Mickie James, according to KaceeCarlisle.com, you broke the news that you have your first ever Canadian appearance coming up. And in addition to that, you're also be headed to Washington and Oregon. You want to talk a little bit about the Pacific Northwest tour?
Truth. Yes, absolutely I do. Indeed, you are correct. It is my first outing into Canada for any reason, much less a professional wrestling match. And the entire loop out there is one that I am excited about, looking forward to. It's going to be really cool to just be able to meet a whole slew of new people. Every match I have is going to be a first-time matchup, clearly. So it's going to be a super fun time. The Canadian show is next Friday, September 16th, and that's going to be for PWA, which is Pure Wrestling Association. And I'm going to be facing Rhea Von Slasher, who I'm getting messages from people telling me that I have to watch out for her because she apparently is known for underhanded tactics. So it sounds like I have some scouting to do because I think I can come up with a few underhanded tactics of my own if need be. And that's going down. It's in British Columbia. Sign Guy, I don't know if I'm going to say the name of this town right or not, so I might be making an ass out of myself. But it's is it Cowichan, British Columbia?
I believe it is Lake Cowichan.
That sounds good to me. That's where it's going down next Friday. I have the names of the towns, and it struck me that I might be pronouncing them incorrectly, so I'm hoping that I'm not looking like a jerk before I come out there. So yes, my very first ever Canadian appearance, hopefully not the last. A little side note there, is happening on Friday, September 16th. And then on Saturday, September 17th, I'll be making my debut for SCW in the Seattle area, and that's is it Palouspo, Sign Guy?
It's Palouspo, just like the town in New Jersey.
Excellent. That apparently is going to be a mixed tag match, which is going to be a lot of fun, I think. We might even have a special referee for that one, correct?
There's rumors, scuttlebutts, and innuendos, but I'm not in the office. I don't know.
Rumors are swirling around, but the match that evening is scheduled to be myself teaming up with Mr. Fitness to face Phantasma Epius and the Immortal Pimp. I cannot wait for that match. That's going to be a fun night. I think we have all kinds of tomfoolery ahead of us, if I must say.
That sounds exciting, and as someone who's been in many, many rings with the Immortal Pimp Randy Taylor, I'll just throw out there, he loves arm drags.
You know what? An arm drag, I've been on the receiving end of an arm drag before. I'm interested to see if that happens again. If so, how his arm drags compare to other arm drags of past competitors. That'll be an interesting little thing to see.
It's one of his favorite things is to arm drag.
And then closing out my little tour of the Pacific Northwest is on Sunday, September 18th, I will be at NWA Blue Collar Wrestling, and that's going to be in Portland, Oregon, with a 6 p.m. bell time. And I will be taking on that evening Sunny Days. And as I said, a first-time matchup, another one that I'm very much looking forward to.
Well, like you said, it's a first-time matchup every single time when you're out here in the Pacific Northwest. Have you done a lot of scouting of the opponents? Have you been watching footage, trying to prepare? Have you been talking to other people in the Northwest, trying to get a feel for these opponents?
I've been scouting. Let's just say I've been spending some quality time with YouTube lately. I plan to continue to spend some quality time with YouTube in the next week or so. I'm definitely going to be doing some scouting, kind of get my game plan set and ready to go, mentally prepare for what lies ahead of me. But needless to say, very excited about 3 debuts, 3 first-time matchups, 4 different opponents when you count the mixed tag match. So it's going to be a really outstanding few days out in the Pacific Northwest. And hopefully anybody who's listening to this, who may listen to it, who's in traveling distance of any of these 3, if not all 3 events, I fully expect to see them in the crowd out there for my debut, for these matches, so I can see exactly what the Pacific Northwest fans have to offer.
Well, at this point, I'm going to pass things over to the only man here that has not worked with you, apparently, the bearded wonder himself, one of the finest ring announcers to ever announce a ring, Zane Paisley.
Well, thank you so much, Sign Guy. This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show on the Angry Marks Podcast Network. We are talking with former National Wrestling Alliance Women's World Heavyweight we don't have to throw heavyweight in there. National Wrestling Alliance Women's World Champion Kacee Carlisle. Here you're putting me over as a great announcer, and then I flub the name of the title. Kacee,
you can call me heavyweight. I'm not a size 0. If you want to call me heavyweight, you can. I won't be mad at you.
No, I want to be very respectful. Sign Guy had mentioned your awesome website, KaceeCarlisle.com. You have some great photos on there with your fans. I love that section of it. You also have T-shirts that we talked about, but also want to let our listeners know that they can get awesome autographed 8x10 photos of you, and you have several different to choose from. What's your favorite out of your current selection that you like?
Oh boy, I'm on the spot because I don't have the numbers memorized to go along with the photo. Darn it. I know that number 1 is one of my favorites. I know that for a fact. Number 1 should be the one with me holding the Valkyrie title.
Okay, yes.
Cool. Okay. See, at least I know one of them that's on my own website, right? I only run this silly thing. That's one of my favorites. And to be honest with you, there aren't really any on there that I dislike, because if I did, I probably wouldn't be selling them and putting them out in the world. But I will say that towards the bottom of that page, when you get to some of the newer photos available, some of those came out really well, and I'm a really big fan of those. So we're talking about a photo, white background, kind of a close-up photo of me. There's a full-length photo of me with a black background as well. There's also an 8x10 available of me sitting on a bench, which is from a few years ago, but it continues to be not only one of my favorites, but a bestseller, which is why it's a few years old, but you continue to see it offered. I've been lucky to have a lot of great merchandise available for people, and I'm always so thankful for people who buy my merchandise, whether it's via my website or in person. The support means a lot to me, and that's very awesome.
What are your thoughts on intergender matches?
Well, I have mixed thoughts on it. No pun intended.
You're very clever.
I kind of have
a couple times tonight.
I wish that was on purpose, because I might have worded it a little differently. But it's really hard for me to say, because on one hand, people used to not even bat an eyelash at having an intergender match. They used to crave it in some ways, and it used to be something that you would see done fairly frequently. And I think as time has gone on, society as a whole has become very aware of and sensitive to things along the domestic violence strain of things that kind of make people go, whoa, when it comes to intergender matches these days. And I can definitely see that. I mean, that, I'm conflicted a little bit in my opinion because I do understand the fact that professional wrestling has always, during its highs and its lows, it's always had some type of effect or impact on their fans, as far as setting an example or setting a trend or giving ideas for, anything like your personality or the way you dress, anything like that, the way you speak, your catchphrases. It's always had a huge influence. And I can understand people's hesitation these days to have the intergender matches because they don't want to give an image to the younger fans coming up who don't necessarily have the thought or the ability at this point to always separate what you see on TV and what happens in life. At the same time, though, for the older fans and people who do have that ability, it's like, the curtain was pulled back on pro wrestling long, long ago. And I believe, in some cases, it's kind of, are you insulting fans by not promoting intergender match because you don't want to, perpetuate domestic violence or men beating up on females or females beating up on males, which is just as bad. My old school self and that little old school voice in my head that speaks so very loudly. In many ways, I go towards not liking them because if I get hit by a dude, I don't care how tough Huck says I am, if I'm the toughest chick in wrestling or not. If I get hit by a guy that's like 6 foot something and 300 something pounds, that stuff ought to keep me down for a while, and it's hard, like, where do you draw the line between what people know to be fact and what they don't want? I don't know. And my rambling, as you can tell, is part of the reason why I'm kind of conflicted because I see both sides of the coin. I see benefits in having intergender matches. I see why you wouldn't want to have one. Just kind of, to me, that's a very personal, subjective type of opinion, where there's a lot of different viewpoints, and I see validity in all of them. So it's hard for me to have a definite stance on it.
I think that you articulated that very well.
Thank you.
It's something that, to me as a fan, if it seems like a legit fight, it can come off well, but I do question why fans and promoters would want to go see a whole evening of that style of match. It should be a special attraction. I don't know. It's a weird thing. So I thank you for your opinion on that. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Well, I know our time is drawing near. What do you have to say to all your fans listening out there? Thank you.
A great, big, huge, fat thank you. I just posted something online today, fitting a shout out and thank yous to the promotion that I wrestled for this past weekend. And in that, I said thank you to the fans, as I always do. And what I said in that post is true. It's my honest opinion. To me, if the fans weren't buying tickets to the shows, the promoters wouldn't have shows to promote and to run and to book me for. So at the end of the day, I don't care I do care how many of my peers think highly of me, of course. But on that level, in that respect, the fans going to the shows and supporting us that way, supporting the promotions we work for, they keep giving me events to get booked for. And when they buy my merchandise, as I said, they don't have to spend their money on me specifically like that, and they choose to do so. They choose to follow me online and so forth. So to the fans, I say thank you so much, especially, again, because there's so many people in this business to choose from. And if somebody's your fan, that's a huge compliment, and it means so much to me. So every time I say thank you to the fans, it's very sincere. It's very heartfelt. It's a great, big, huge thank you because it really does mean a lot to me.
Well, and my final question for you, you said that from a very young age that you wanted to become a professional wrestler. What, other than pro wrestling, what do you geek out for? Are you a huge fan of a certain band or horror movies or what do you geek out for other than pro wrestling?
Not horror movies. No, definitely not that. Gosh, it's sad to say there's not really a whole lot. I geek out over my family. I geek out over actually, believe it or not, being behind the camera. I'm a very avid amateur photographer, even though I don't get out that often. I geek out over old school game shows, and I geek out over the band Him that originated in Finland, and some people may be familiar with them. Other than that, wrestling takes up so much of my mind and my thoughts and my life. I don't really have much going on. I know, but I don't. So, music, old school game shows. Honestly, I'm pretty much summing it up for you guys right there.
Well, Kacee, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And best of luck to you this weekend in Virginia against Mickie James. I just blanked for a second. She's an awesome competitor, and best of luck on your debut in Canada and then up in the Pacific Northwest. We really appreciate you taking the time with us tonight.
Thank you. I very much appreciate you guys giving me the time and having me on. And thank you for the kind words as well. I very much appreciate it.
Well, obviously, you've got 2 huge fans on the show, and now you've got a third. So we really appreciate it. We want to have you back on.
Oh, thank you. I would love to do that anytime.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night. Talk to you soon.